Yo, what is up, guys? It's your girl Bex, and welcome back to the race rundown post race weekend in Singapore. And what an interesting one it was. Lucky number 3 for Lando Norris. Not so lucky for Mr. Carlos Sainz. If you all watched qualifying, you will know that the impact of that crash didn't look great, did it? Didn't look great. Straight into the barrier, rear wheel took out the side pod. Yeah, it wasn't great. Wasn't great at all. I was for sure thinking that would happen again in the actual race. However, it did not. So, on that note, let's get right into it. Stroll had some brake problems before the start of the race. I had him down as an early retirement in my predictions. However, that did not come into fruition. He did not score any points. He was down in 14th. So, at this stage, Stroll has issues before the start. Then, okay, the race start. Now, for all of the McLaren fans out there, we all know at this point that Lando Norris has had, how do I put this politely, a little bit of an issue with the race start and his ability to nail it. He's bottled it quite a few times now, and I was thinking, oh God, he's on pole in Singapore. He's just going to bottle it. Max is going to pull ahead. It's going to be a nightmare. However, I was wrong. Thank God. Thank God I was wrong, okay? Lando absolutely nailed the start and pulled out a 2-second lead in 8 laps. 2 seconds. Compared to Max's 25 seconds at the beginning of the season. Doesn't seem like a lot. However, wait for it, people. Wait for it. Now, if you are not a McLaren fan, you might be thinking to yourself, oh God, this is all she's going to talk about. You would be correct. No, I'm joking. I mean, it was the highlight, obviously. But we're going to talk about the whole thing. So, he pulls out a 2-second lead in 8 laps. The team then says to Lando, get a lap of 5 seconds by the mid-teens to cover Max. Lando then says, hold my beer, lads, and gets a 7.1 second lead by lap 13. He was like, I'll do you one better, lads. I'll get an extra 2.1 seconds because why not? You know, why not? If I could get extra, then I bloody will. So the race continues. 3 more laps. I look up from my notes while I was watching the race, and I see that by lap 16, Lando said, you wanted 5, I'll give you 10. And got a 10-second lead by lap 16. At this point, the back end of the pack started to bunch up. Perez. High praises from Perez to Colapinto. Basically saying, look, he's really hard to pass. Like, he's a good driver. And I agree. I agree. Colapinto is absolutely smashing it. He deserves a seat for next year. Do we think he'll get one? I'm not too sure, to be honest. I'm really not too sure. I have a sneaky suspicion that Danny Rick may be getting replaced with Colapinto. I'm not sure. I would be sad to see that happen. However, it is what it is. Okay? So, then, 10 laps later from lap 16, 20-second gap between Lando and Max. He said, I'll give you 4 times the gap you wanted. Because why not? And at this time, everyone in my group chat was like, oh yeah, Lando's won this, it's fine. Me, on the other hand, I'm like, I don't want to celebrate too soon because I've been there and done that. Russia. I don't want to be there too soon celebrating and then have it stripped away from me in the worst possible way. And he's pulling out this lead, and at the whole time I'm just looking at Piastri's pit strategy and whatever the hell McLaren were up to with his pit strategy, and honestly it was lackluster. I know they said that they were going to start prioritising Lando, and that's great for his potential championship win, which won't happen, by the way. As much as I would love to be optimistic, I'm calling it here. 7 races left to go. Max would have to come second and he would still win. So I don't think that that's going to happen, to be honest. I really don't. The only way that we could potentially pull a lead is if he gets 2 DNFs, which is so unlikely. But Piastri's pit strategy was just a bit lackluster. And I mean, he could have easily gone for that fight with Russell. earlier, if they'd have pitted him earlier. Obviously, he ended up ahead of Russell and on the podium, which was great. You know, we love a McLaren 1 and 3, you know. Both of them up on the podium. We're pulling away in the constructors. Like, great, fantastic. But if they'd have just altered the pit strategy, I genuinely believe that he could have had contention for a 1-2 there. It would have been close, don't get me wrong. But I think he could have taken Max quite easily, and it could have been a McLaren 1-2. But that was not to be. Piastri eventually pits, gets straight past Lewis on lap 40 and begins catching Russell. At this point, Lando is so far gone, that he could have just coasted and been perfectly fine. He was nearly an entire pit stop ahead of Max, which is just absolutely outrageous. And whatever rockets they attached to that McLaren, like, fair play. You know, fair play. At this particular stage in the race, K-Mag and Albon were out. And I was watching this thinking, Danny Rick is coming into the pits. Why is he coming into the pits? Well, right at the last minute, ladies and gentlemen, Danny Rick did a free stop. And me and the F1 commentary team were like, huh? Don't do this. Don't do a free stop race on your potential last race for the RBs. But this did, in fact, pay off with Daniel clinching the fastest lap of the race, taking it away from Lando and potentially helping Max out as part of the Red Bull family. So I guess this is the most important bit of off-track news here, I guess. I don't want to make this sound like a farewell because it's not fully confirmed yet. But do we think that this is lights out curtains for Danny Rick? Do we think that Singapore was his final race and we won't be seeing him in Austin? Now, I have opinions on Daniel Ricciardo as a racing driver, not a person. As a person, I'm sure he's lovely. He seems very cheerful. He seems very open, great for marketing, great for interviews, you know, like, fantastic. However, as a racing driver, personally, I think he had the chance to prove himself at Red Bull. He didn't. He got frustrated by Max and left. He had a chance to prove himself at McLaren, got frustrated, and Zach got frustrated and paid him off. And I think those knocks to his confidence have led him to be where he is now. And I genuinely believe that this isn't going to go down very well. In my opinion, I don't think he belongs on the grid anymore. I think for press stuff, you know, Goodwood, press stuff for Red Bull, YouTube, that kind of stuff, he's great. Especially as I know Max doesn't enjoy all that stuff. Daniel can step in and that would be great. But I don't think when we have the likes of Colapinto, Behrman, Lawson, you know, there's talent there that deserve that slot. And I think, and I'm going to say it, the likes of Danny Rick and Stroll don't belong on the grid when we have actual talent that deserve to be there. Now, I know Max made that very clear with Stroll sat right next to him. I am in firm agreement with Max on that, and I think that is the only thing that me and Max Verstappen will ever agree on, is the fact that Stroll does not belong in Formula 1. Yeah, so a short episode this week because I just wanted to have a little bit of a race rundown of Singapore, a little bit of a chat around Danny Rick, and other than that, there hasn't really been a lot of news since my last episode. Obviously, the news of Adrian Newey was massive last week, and other than that, there isn't really a lot. There's a lot of speculation around Checo's seat, which I feel like we've been speculating about that all season long at this point. I think I'm about 18 episodes in and I still mention it every single episode. I don't know. If the man gets to keep his seat, fantastic. I think he is a really talented driver, but also if he doesn't, who would get his seat instead? Another bit of off-the-track news that I want to let everybody know about, just to sort of round off this episode. A bit of a short one this week, however. I just wanted to give you a little bit of a rundown of what I did at the weekend. This past weekend, went to the F1 exhibition in London. Now, I went into it completely blind. I'd seen one video before booking my tickets, and I certainly was not disappointed. There was plenty to look at. I'm going to throw some pictures up on screen now for the people that are watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple, feel free to head over to @TheRaceRundown on YouTube. Go have a look at the images and the footage that I collected for you guys. It was certainly something that you had to experience with your own eyes. I feel like my pictures don't do it justice. It was an amazing day with, of course, my Formula One friends. It was great. And the only issue I had, of course I did because I'm biased, is that the gift shop didn't have any McLaren merch, guys. And it was blinking expensive. A white t-shirt with a red Haas logo on it would cost you 80 quid. Just saying. That's a lot of money. Even for me, that's a lot of money. And I've bought ridiculous amounts of Lego and merch and turbo attacks and all that fun stuff. They didn't even sell turbo attacks in there, guys. Like, what? Anyway, the actual exhibit itself, without spoiling it, was really good. There was a lot of standout highlight moments in there. There was some unbelievable images, a collection of technical drawings, if you like that side of stuff, the history of racing, some of the old school cars. Yeah, it was so good and so great, and I highly recommend anyone that is umming and ahhing on whether they should go, just do it. It's a fun day out. It's about 35 quid to get in. It's a fun day out, and you get to look at history, you know, and modern history as well, might I add. The RB is there, and it was surprisingly pretty. I'm just going to leave that there. It was surprisingly pretty, considering I'm not a Red Bull fan. Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, until the 18th of October at the United States of America, Austin, Texas Grand Prix, I've been your girl Bex. This has been the Race Rundown from the Singapore Grand Prix. And I'll see you next time. Peace!